Good morning, everyone. I'm Jill McKnight, the Liberal candidate for Delta. Thank you to Intelligent City for hosting us this morning. As we begin, I would like to acknowledge that this announcement is taking place on the shared, traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Tsawwassen, Musqueam, and other Coast Salish people. Delta is an incredible place, and for 42 years, it's been my home. My parents and I built 2 successful businesses here, and I know firsthand that strong businesses are the cornerstone of vibrant communities. As the former executive director of the Delta Chamber of Commerce, I've helped entrepreneurs and workers not only survive difficult times, but thrive in this great city. Now Canada faces new challenges, and I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and bring the same dedication to Ottawa, representing Delta. While knocking on doors, I've heard residents loud and clear. It's time for a bold, innovative plan to build the housing our families and workers need. We must create homes that are affordable and built with Canadian materials and labor. Prime Minister Mark Carney is the right leader to build a stronger, more confident Canada, a Canada that invests in its people and ensures a prosperous future for generations to come. That's why I joined the Liberal Party, because Liberals invest in Delta, and we believe in a strong country for all Canadians. It is my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Gregory Robertson, our candidate in Vancouver Fraserview, South Burnaby.
Thank you, Jill, and I'm honored to be here today representing the Liberal Party for Vancouver Fraserview, South Burnaby. And I'll just start by describing in my time as mayor of Vancouver, the challenges we had. We did everything we could as a city to create affordable housing in partnership with the private, nonprofit, and co-op industry. But for most of my decade in office, we lacked leadership and investment from conservative governments, both the federal and provincial levels. And our numbers improved in my 3rd term of office as we saw a change in the politics with the Trudeau and then Horgan governments, but we still fell short of what was needed to make up for decades of inadequate investment from the federal level in particular. The lack of affordable housing has a ripple effect. It locks Canadians out of opportunity, it weakens our economy, it hurts our communities deeply. And that's why I'm so proud of the unprecedented scale of the Build Canada Homes plan that Prime Minister Mark Carney announced 1 week ago in Vaughan, Ontario, and of the focus on Canadian building technology today. These are the innovations that enable us to build green at the speed and scale that's needed. We need to reimagine our economy to invest in Canada, building homes that are affordable, sustainable, and made with Canadian materials, innovation, and Canadian workers. Prime Minister Carney is the only leader with the boldness, the experience, and the strength to lead us there. And it's now my great honor to introduce the leader of the Liberal Party, Mark Carney.
Thank you very much, Gregor. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. It's a great pleasure. I also want to thank Jill et un grand remercie à tous nos exceptionnels candidats libéraux de la Colombie-Britannique qui se joignent à nous aujourd'hui. I'm also very pleased that we're joined by Brenda Knights, Vanessa Mountain, and Helen Song from the BC Indigenous Housing Society. And I want to thank Intelligent City's team for welcoming us to this extraordinary pilot mass timber construction facility. You, Intelligent City, are the future of housing construction in this country. This is exactly the type of innovation that we need to tackle the housing crisis and the economic crisis that has been brought on by President Trump's trade war. See, President Trump is in the process of trying to fundamentally restructure the US economy. And in the process, he is rupturing the global economy. The immediate impact has been sharp falls and ongoing volatility in global financial markets, putting retirement savings at risk. people's livelihoods, from the auto industry in Ontario to the forestry workers here in British Columbia, those livelihoods being put in jeopardy. The US is again targeting the Canadian forestry industry by more than doubling the duties charged on softwood lumber. That decision, as well as with the other Trump tariffs, is unjustified, it is unwarranted, and it's fundamentally misguided. Canadian softwood lumber is integral to building homes across the United States. And the US tariffs will only increase the cost of materials for American builders, and ultimately American homebuyers will pay the price. Nous ne pouvons pas contrôler le président Trump, mais nous pouvons contrôler nos propres actions. Nous contrôler notre propre destinée. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. Nous allons répondre avec force et objectif clair. Nous allons nous battre. Nous allons protéger les Canadiens et Canadiennes et nous allons bâtir une économie forte. Nous allons nous battre avec des contre-tarifs qui auront un impact maximal aux États-Unis et un impact minimal ici au Canada. We will protect Canadian workers and businesses using every single dollar that we collect from our counter tariffs. For workers across the country, my government has already made employment insurance more immediate and more generous. Pour soutenir les entreprises canadiennes, nous avons temporairement reporté les paiements d'impôts sur le revenu ainsi que les versements de la TPS et de la TVH. Nous avons créé de nouveaux mécanismes de financement pour leur donner accès à plus de liquidités et nous avons augmenté le financement des agences de développement régional. We recently also invested over $20 million to boost the competitiveness and resiliency of BC's forestry sector. But above all, our response is to build. We will build a new Canadian economy, the strongest economy in the G7. We will build Canada strong. Well, the US is trying to keep high-quality, sustainable Canadian lumber out. We will use more of it here in our plan to double the pace of housing construction in this country over the course of the next 10 years. This is the most ambitious housing plan since the Second World War. We will build our way out of the housing crisis. We will build our way out of the economic crisis. We will make housing more affordable in Canada once more. Because, as Gregor intimated, today's reality is that even when Canadians, particularly young Canadians, are doing everything right, they're getting a good education, they're studying hard, they're securing a well-paying job, they're saving up, they often barely have enough to pay the rent, let alone to afford a new home. On average, across this country, it takes over 4 years to save for a down payment. For first-time buyers, it's over 6 years. And in markets like Vancouver, much longer. This has been the most expensive housing market in the country for a very long time. So business as usual will not work. The status quo cannot stand. We need a new approach that recognizes that it's time to build. My government will flip the script on housing with a new strategy to build faster, smarter, more affordably, and more sustainably. We will address failures in the housing market head-on, unleashing the power of public-private cooperation at a scale not seen in generations. As I said, our goal is to double the pace of housing construction to almost 500,000 new homes every single year. Homes you can afford to buy. Homes that are more sustainable and cost less to live in. Homes made right here with Canadian ingenuity, Canadian labor, Canadian products, including softwood lumber and mass timber. The first part of our plan is to create a new entity, Build Canada Homes, a lean, mission-driven organization that will act as a developer on new affordable housing projects, get the government back in the business of building affordable homes, including on federal public lands. Build Canada Homes will provide billions of dollars in financing for affordable home builders to construct deeply affordable homes for those most in need, as well as housing for students and seniors. And above all, Build Canada Homes will catalyze an entirely new housing industry with Canadian lumber at the center of it. Look, the way we build homes needs to change. Prefabricated and modular housing are the future. They can drive down time to completion by up to 50%. They can reduce costs by up to 20%, emissions by over 20% compared to traditional construction methods. And Canada should be the world leader in this new industry. And as you can see here, we're already well positioned to do so. And that's why my government will provide $25 billion, I'll repeat, $25 billion in financing to scale the industry up massively, to create high-paying jobs, high-skilled jobs up and down the supply chain in prefabricated and modular housing factories like this one, in innovative housing research, such as at the UBC Smart Structures, which I visited just in February, and in our world-class forestry industry. Our plan will revitalize our construction sector, where in recent years, labor productivity has been stagnant and costs have risen over 50%. Prefabricated and modular housing will catalyze a productivity boom while creating tens of thousands of not just jobs, but tens of thousands of new high-paying careers in the skilled trades. And as we announced just this past Saturday in Oakville, we will transform the opportunities for those who want to pursue those careers by covering the cost of apprenticeships, by doubling support for union training, and by providing the capital needed to expand capacity in post-secondary institutions. Our bold housing strategy will scale the demand for mass timber innovators such as Intelligent City. We're already ahead of the curve on mass timber. As of 2 years ago, over 600 mass timber projects have been completed here, almost twice the number in the United States. Mass timber is already almost a $500 million industry in Canada. That's projected to triple by the end of this decade. It can go much, much higher. We're thinking out of the box to build a prosperity that does not rely on the United States, that uses Canadian ingenuity to build Canada strong. On top of creating Build Canada Homes, on top of building a thriving new housing industry with Canadian lumber at the heart of it, our housing plan will make the housing market work better, much better, to build more supply, to reduce costs for people who rent and those who buy. Pour les 5 prochaines années, mon gouvernement va couper de moitié les taxes sur la construction de bâtiments résidentiels avec plusieurs unités, ce qui va permettre des économies de plus de $60 000 sur le prix moyen d'un appartement avec une chambre à coucher à Vancouver. And that's why for the next 5 years, my government will cut development charges and taxes on home building in half for all multi-unit housing. That's about $60,000 off the cost of an average apartment in Vancouver. We'll bring back the multi-unit residential building tax incentive, which, when it was first introduced in the 1970s, spurred tens of thousands of rental housing units across this country. As you can see, our government will be ambitious, but we will also be pragmatic. We're going to double down on what's already working, such as the new Housing Accelerator Fund. Countless mayors who've signed on in British Columbia, from Kelowna to Vancouver, have said that it's gaining traction in getting more homes built in their communities. So we'll reinforce it. And we'll also include public reporting on municipalities' progress to speed up permitting and approval timelines. The new homes that are built will be more energy efficient. They will be more cheap to live in. Today, I'm also announcing that a new Liberal government will invest more to power existing homes with efficient, affordable heating and cooling and make those homes more resilient to extreme weather. We're funding home retrofits like heat pumps or old window replacements that will lower the utility bills of Canadians while reducing household emissions. At the same time, we will fund roof replacements, foundation repairs, and more to protect Canadians' homes from floods and wildfires that are becoming increasingly common because of climate change. These programs will be largely financed by the new large emitter carbon credit market, meaning that big polluters, not taxpayers, will pay. It's a smart system that will work better for everyone. Avec le plan de mon gouvernement pour le logement, nous allons renouveler notre manière de bâtir. Parce que, dans une crise, on ne peut pas se permettre de maintenir le statu quo. This is an all-hands-on-deck industrial strategy to get millions more homes built using high-quality, sustainable Canadian lumber. It recognizes that young Canadians can't wait any longer. It recognizes that they deserve the same opportunities that previous generations like mine had. It recognizes that sometimes your government needs to step in and step up. Now, unfortunately, there is someone who doesn't get that. Pierre Poilievre thinks government should do nothing. He'd even cancel that housing accelerator fund, despite the success the municipalities across this province, across this country, and despite the pleas of many of his own candidates who've been begging for housing accelerator fund money for their communities. Pierre Poilievre's answer to everything is a slogan and a tax cut. Unlike Pierre Poilievre, I've actually worked in the private sector. I know how the world works, and I know how it can be made to work better for everyone. I know, Liberals know, that markets, the private sector, are the most powerful tools we've ever invented, and they can help find solutions to our greatest problems. Yet we also know that markets can fall short, especially at times of great change. Our country has a huge need for new housing, and we must support our forestry industry through these challenging times and into a better future. These are insurmountable challenges if, like Pierre Poilievre, your only plan involves fiddling with the tax code and slashing programs that work. But if you actually want to build the future, this is an amazing opportunity. An opportunity to create an entirely new housing industry, one that will create tens of thousands of careers up and down the housing supply chain. An industry that can help sustain tens of thousands of jobs in our BC forestry industry, all while reducing our reliance on the United States. We can give ourselves more than any foreign government, including the United States, can ever take away. Nous pouvons accomplir des choses qui, dans le passé, auraient semblé impossibles à une vitesse sans précédent. Nous pouvons bâtir ici chez nous, comme nous l'avons fait dans le passé. We can build things in this country again. We can ensure that if you work hard, you will be able to afford a good life. We can create secure careers, a strong economy, affordable homes. Nous allons non seulement protéger les travailleurs de l'industrie forestière, nous allons bâtir une industrie forestière plus forte que jamais. Une industrie qui va créer de bons emplois et de la richesse pour les générations à venir, ici en Colombie-Britannique, au Québec et à partir au pays. that independent future for our country stronger than ever. We can build Canada strong. Thank you, merci, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll do 15 minutes of question with our media delegation and turn over to locals. CBC.
Hello, Karina Roman, CBC News. When the Liberals have won government, most times it's without needing to do well in the West. You're in the West, you're headed to Calgary,
Yep.
You're here making your pitch to voters in the West. How do you convince them that you care about their issues if the West isn't key for the Liberals in terms of a path to victory?
Well, let me say a couple of things. First, I'm not a career politician. I'm a pragmatist. I'm here to get things done. I'm here to address a series of crises. The crisis, first and foremost, with the United States, the crisis in housing, the cost of living crisis. And I'm bringing that perspective. I am asking through the Liberal Party, for the support of all Canadians to serve all Canadians for those crises. I happen to be from the West. I have deep ties to Alberta, where I grew up, ties to the Territories, where I was born, and ties to BC, where my family, my mother and my sister now live. I know the West, and I think I have a good sense, buttressed by our candidates here in British Columbia, of what's required. And the last point, and I'll hand back, is that the scale of what we're announcing today, the scale and the degree to which what we're announcing spreads across the needs of the West, the needs, and I'll speak specifically to British Columbia, a cutting edge industry as represented by this company, a huge challenge for our people in housing, integrating all of the solutions back into the core that help build British Columbia, our forestry industry, and solving multiple problems at the same time, providing a better life for people in the West and across Canada. That's the approach we'll take. And that's why we're here asking for the support of voters in British Columbia and across the West. Thank you. En français, j'ai grandi en Alberta, ma famille habite en Colombie-Britannique, je suis né au territoire nord-ouest. Mais je ne suis pas un politicien de carrière, je suis pragmatiste. Et je travaille pour tous les Canadiens et Canadiennes, y compris évidemment des citoyens, des concitoyennes de l'Ouest du Canada. Et cette annonce aujourd'hui indique l'approche, la stratégie du Parti libéral. On trouve des solutions, des grandes solutions pour les problèmes les plus sévères pour les gens qui habitent ici, la crise de logement, c'est-à-dire la crise de logement, avec une stratégie qui crée une nouvelle industrie ici, en Colombie-Britannique, y compris le secteur forestier. Okay.
And for a follow-up, do you worry that making jokes about Premier Daniel Smith will contribute to Western alienation?
It was a lighthearted comment. I have a lot of respect for the Premier. We've worked together, including on the agreement at First Ministers, the unanimous agreement on First Ministers of having one Canadian economy as opposed to 13, developing new trade and energy corridors. I refer to our meeting in Ottawa of 2.5 weeks ago. There was a lot of opportunity for Alberta, for Canada, and my government will spare no effort to make sure that the people of Alberta, the people of Canada realize those opportunities. Thank you.
No?
Next question.
Okay.
Hi, Mr. Carney. Abigail Beeman, CTV News. On tax havens in relation to Brookfield, you've said that you know how the world works. Should Canadians infer from that you wouldn't condemn the use of tax havens?
I've very strong. I have a long career in the private sector. I've a longer career in the public sector. What's important is that we have a effective tax system, and that every company follows the rules of those tax to not just the letter but the spirit of those regulations. And we need to continue to refine our tax system to ensure that companies are paying their fair share of tax. And my government will also ensure that the federal government is spending only those dollars that are necessary. So one of the core elements of our strategy is to spend less as a federal government so that Canada can invest more. And I'll finish on this point, which is we want to make sure that scarce federal dollars, taxpayers' dollars, catalyze enormous private investment. And so the scale of what we're looking to do in the housing sector is indicative of that. Scarce dollars, massive private investment.
I'd also like to ask you to respond to Mr. Poilievre's rallies. He's attracting thousands of people who are motivated in a way we haven't seen in quite a while. A lot of them don't like you. If you were to win, how would you address that segment of the population?
I think the first is to recognize that as a government, you serve all Canadians. That's fundamental. It goes to the previous question with respect to the West. It goes to your question. I am not running to be a MP for a segment of Nepean, which is the constituency, the riding in which I'm running. I'm not running for a segment. I'm running to represent all the people of Nepean. With my Liberal colleagues, they are doing the same. But if we form government, if Canadians give us that trust, we then serve all Canadians equally. It's a sacred honor to be bestowed on individuals, and one I take exceptionally seriously. Thank you. En ce qui concerne, je suis comme étant député pour Nepean, si ce sera la décision des électeurs, je serai le membre pour toutes les concitoyennes de Nepean, pas seulement des gens qui ont voté pour le Parti libéral. C'est le même pour tous les députés, tous les candidats. Et étant gouvernement, on sert tous les Canadiens et Canadiennes. Et ça, c'est une responsabilité fondamentale de notre système. Madame.
Kat Tunney from CBC. The site election task force is reporting a PRC-linked campaign that focused on you and your campaign. Can you share anything more about what you were briefed on, and are you comfortable with that support?
Well, a couple of things I'll say. So one of the steps I took as Prime Minister was to review the measures to ensure electoral integrity, to fight against foreign interference. And so some of that is just briefing on specific situations, which obviously I can't share. But I approved some structural changes, which included that the site task force publicly report any incidents that they became aware of in real time. So as you would know, but maybe others don't, this is the third public report they've made. So I felt it important that there was that transparency. And that transparency will continue. I note that the critical evaluation panel, I believe it's called, that is associated with the site task force, makes their judgment about the seriousness or not of these incidents, and that in their judgment that this does not affect the ability of the country to conduct a free and fair election. But I fundamentally think that what's important is Canadians get that transparency in real time, and I think it's been a welcome development for Canadians, but also a warning to foreign actors that we are on top of these things.
From my understanding, some of the campaign was pushing positive narratives about you. Why do you think that China, the PRC, seems to like you? Why are they praising you?
I have absolutely no idea, and I have absolutely no idea, and I think I'll leave it at that.
Catherine Lévesque, National Post. Good morning.
Good morning.
Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper had lots of things to say about you yesterday. One
Well,
of
that's
them
nice.
being that he worked with yourself and Pierre Poilievre, and he would prefer Mr. Poilievre over you. Would you like to respond to that? And why did you refuse to become his finance minister?
Okay, packed a lot in there. Look, Stephen Harper appointed me governor of the Bank of Canada. I worked closely with the late and great Jim Flaherty during the financial crisis. We resolved a number of situations. Many people are familiar with that experience. I note that Pierre Poilievre was not at any of those tables, was not given any of that responsibilities, and note further that in subsequent years he has not gained any responsibility in managing crises or difficult situations. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
En français, j'ai travaillé pendant la période de la crise financière mondiale dans une étroite collaboration avec M. Flaherty. Il était exceptionnel comme ministre des Finances. Et je note que autour de la table, M. Poilievre n'était pas là. Jamais n'était pas là. Il n'a aucune expérience de gérer des crises, de bâtir une économie forte à ce moment-là et pas après.
Why did you refuse to become Stephen Harper's finance minister? Just want to clarify.
You just want look.
You said it yourself that
I didn't think it was appropriate to move from my position into that role.
Une dernière question?
Bonjour, M. Carney, Christian
Bonjour.
Noël de Radio-Canada. Il y a des migrants haïtiens en ce moment qui fuient les États-Unis pour rentrer au Canada de façon irrégulière parce qu'ils fuient Donald Trump. Est-ce qu'on doit les renvoyer ou les accueillir?
Premièrement, je reconnais la forte accroissement des demandeurs d'asile qui viennent des États-Unis. Nous avons un accord du pays sûr, en effet, avec les États-Unis. Et c'est dans cet accord, on peut les renvoyer aux États-Unis. Selon moi, ça c'est approprié, ça reste approprié. Ouais.
Contrairement donc à ce que M. Trudeau faisait, qui lui disait « Venez au Canada, nous allons vous... »
Je-
Contrairement à ce que M. Trudeau disait, lui disait « Venez les accueillir, vous êtes prêts à vous... »
Oui, la situation aux États-Unis a changé, a bien changé, parce qu'il existe maintenant la possibilité d'une vague des demandes d'asile. Et il faut travailler, il faut que le Canada et les États-Unis travaillent dans une plus étroite collaboration afin de gérer cette situation. C'est pas acceptable que les États-Unis nous donnent tous leurs demandeurs d'asile, en effet. Alors, la situation a bien changé maintenant. OK? Merci.
All right, we'll go over to locals.
Phil Melnichuk, Delta Optimist newspaper. I'm just wondering, after the meeting with Premier Eby yesterday, if you have any further details to share on support for softwood lumber, National Transportation Corridor, and in particular, the funding for the Fraser River Tunnel.
First off, I want to thank Premier Eby for the meeting yesterday. It was very constructive. We talked at great length in terms of Canada's strategy with respect to U.S. tariffs and with respect to softwood lumber. As you may know, the tariffs announced, proposed tariffs announced by the U.S. Trade Representative a couple of days ago would take effect in August. So we have a bit of time to put the full strategy in place, although we watched the whole thing. So we had discussion around that. We had discussion around the $20 million fund for the competitiveness that the federal government has put, that I'm proposing the federal government would put forward, and how we'd work on that. We talked about today's announcements and how that works to supply big support for demand here in the BC forest sector, and as well how we could integrate that with other housing measures. So all of that is, so we had quite a comprehensive discussion. On with respect to the Fraser River Tunnel, I would say this: we have put in place, or we have proposed during the election campaign, a $5 billion fund for trade infrastructure, trade and commercial infrastructure. It would be, I fully understand the pressing need for progress here. You can just see it this morning driving here, but I understand it on a deeper technical level. So we're putting in place the tools. I expect to have very strong and productive cooperation with Premier Eby's government on this and other areas. Thank you.
Next question.
Good morning, Thomas Steele from Bloomberg News. Trump's so-called reciprocal tariffs come into effect tomorrow, and it seems like there's a bit of a queue now forming to negotiate with his administration, Japan, etc. They want to cut bilateral deals. So is there some pressure to get talks going now rather than waiting a month until the election is over?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that President Trump and I, in advance of the reciprocal tariffs, agreed that we would have a comprehensive negotiation after the election, which, as you know, is in less than 3 weeks' time. Literally, potentially starting the day after the election. So the Prime Minister at that point, which I'm working very hard to earn the vote so that it would be me, but would begin those negotiations with the President. So that's the situation. I think we have to be realistic that during an election period, we have the ability, we ensured that we had the ability to respond to counter tariffs, but that is different than negotiating any element of a new agreement during what is a caretaker period of the government. Thank you.
Next question.
Hi, Jared Yeager here with the Western Standard. So yesterday at your rally, you said Pierre Poilievre's plan is to, quote, divide and be conquered. As of now, Canada is reliant on the U.S. to get our own oil from one side of the country to the other. By not repealing Bill C-69 and allowing Quebec to veto a pipeline across Canada, are you not yourself setting up Canada to be divided and conquered?
Absolutely not. In fact, in the premise of your question, you answer it, which is, if we are going to build, and I am a proponent of building big energy infrastructure in this country, but if we are going to build big energy infrastructure in this country, there is a we in that. It is not imposed. It is not imposed by the federal government. It's not imposed by an opposition politician. It's not imposed by a company. It requires the support of, in the example you gave, in Energy East of Quebec, the other provinces that are affected. It requires the support, the free, prior, and informed consent of First Nations. So that's the exact opposite, which is that coming together to build. Now, what I've proposed, both at the First Minister's level and more broadly, is that we as a country use this crisis to identify those projects of national interest, many of which, not all of which, but many of which are energy infrastructure projects, so that we can get those agreements, so that we can come together and we can accelerate. And last point, with respect to C-69, what I've also been clear about is the ability under C-69, not as it was, but as it is, and the Minister of Natural Resources, Mr. Wilkinson, is here, as it is under his leadership. We have an ability to rely on, as appropriate, impact assessments that are performed at different levels of government. And that is part and parcel of how we can make this work. So I reject the question, but I hope I've provided some illumination. Thank you.
We'll take one last question.
Bonjour, Monsieur Carney. Michel
Bonjour.
Sabat pour la presse canadienne. À peine un peu plus du tiers de vos candidats sont des femmes. Pourquoi avez-vous choisi de ne pas vous placer dans la zone paritaire?
Encore une fois, c'est...
Il y a à peine un peu plus du tiers de vos candidats qui sont des femmes. Environ 36% de vos candidats.
36, OK.
D'accord.
OK.
Donc,
À peu
pourquoi est-ce que
près,
vous avez choisi de ne pas vous placer dans cette zone paritaire, environ moitié-moitié?
OK, les chiffres sont les chiffres, mais je suis dédié à d'avoir, par exemple, une cabinet équilibré pendant le mandat d'un gouvernement, par exemple. Et puis, à ce moment-ci, dans le Canada, il y en a 23 personnes, 23 ministres et 11 femmes. Alors, on va l'équilibrer si nous serons élus. On va l'équilibrer pendant le mandat. Mais merci pour votre question. Okay?
Thank you. This is what concludes today's press conference.
Thank you.